Mabel stood awkwardly at the edge of the opulent ballroom, feeling like a sparrow trapped in a gilded cage. The grandeur of the room was overwhelming, with its high ceilings adorned with intricate moldings and walls draped in rich velvet curtains. She felt small and insignificant amidst the splendor, her simple dress a stark contrast to the opulence that surrounded her. The crystal chandeliers cast a blinding shimmer, reflecting off the sea of silk and sequins that surrounded her. Each dress seemed to sparkle with its own light, creating a dazzling display that was almost too much to take in. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfumes, mingling with the aroma of gourmet hors d'oeuvres being passed around by impeccably dressed waitstaff. Her father, Luis, a man who moved with an air of quiet power and wealth, had vanished into the throng of well-heeled guests, leaving her tethered to the edge of the dance floor like a forgotten handbag. She didn't belong here. Luis was in his element, effortlessly navigating the crowd, his presence commanding respect and admiration. Mabel, on the other hand, felt like an outsider looking in, her heart pounding with anxiety. This world of champagne wishes and caviar dreams felt alien to her simple life back in their small, cozy cottage. The cottage, with its worn wooden floors and the comforting smell of home-cooked meals, was a far cry from the cold elegance of the ballroom. She longed for the familiar warmth of the fireplace, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees outside, and the simple pleasures of her everyday life. Her fingers fidgeted with the worn fabric of her dress, a stark contrast to the haute couture gowns that brushed past her. Each gown was a masterpiece, crafted from the finest materials and adorned with intricate beadwork and embroidery. Mabel couldn't help but feel envious of the women who wore them with such ease and confidence, their laughter ringing out like music in the grand hall. Each laugh felt too loud, each smile too bright, each conversation a whirlwind of names she couldn't grasp. The guests moved with a practiced grace, their interactions smooth and effortless. Mabel felt like she was watching a performance, each person playing their part to perfection. She struggled to keep up, her mind racing as she tried to remember the names and faces that blurred together in the chaos. Luis, engrossed in conversation with a group of men with polished smiles and even more polished shoes, hadn't even noticed her discomfort. He was deep in discussion, his voice low and authoritative, his gestures confident and assured. Mabel felt a pang of loneliness, wishing he would look her way, if only for a moment, to offer her some reassurance. Mabel sighed, feeling utterly invisible, a ghost in a world that shimmered but held no warmth. The guests moved around her as if she didn't exist, their conversations and laughter creating a barrier she couldn't penetrate. She felt a deep sense of isolation, her presence unnoticed and unacknowledged. The ballroom, with all its beauty and grandeur, felt like a prison, trapping her in a world where she didn't belong. Just as she contemplated making a quiet escape to the sanctuary of the ladies' room, a voice, soft and breathless, stopped her in her tracks. It was a voice she didn't recognize, yet it held a warmth and kindness that made her pause. She turned, her heart pounding to see who had spoken, hoping for a friendly face in the sea of strangers. The voice, gentle and reassuring, was like a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge of her despair.
Excuse me, are you admiring our reflection or wondering how we escaped from a Jane Austen novel?
Mabel whirled around, her heart stammering in her chest. She had been lost in thought, the hum of the wedding reception fading into the background. The voice that had interrupted her reverie was both familiar and foreign, sending a shiver down her spine. Standing before her was a young woman, her smile as bright as the diamonds that glittered on the fingers that held a champagne flute. The woman's presence was magnetic, drawing Mabel in despite the confusion swirling in her mind. And yet it wasn't her smile that stole Mabel's breath away. It was her face, a face that mirrored her own so perfectly, it was as if she were staring into a living, breathing reflection. Her eyes, the exact shade of stormy gray as Mabel's, widened in amusement. "Mabel, she stammered, words failing her as she tried to make sense of the impossible sight before her.
It is a bit startling, isn't it? The woman said, her voice gentle yet tinged with a knowing edge. To come face to face with yourself at a wedding. The words hung in the air, surreal and heavy with implication, especially when you weren't aware you had a twin. The revelation hit Mabel like a tidal wave, crashing over her and leaving her gasping for breath.
Her words hung in the air, sharp and cold as shattered glass. Mabel's mind raced, trying to piece together fragments of memories and explanations that had never quite fit. A twin? The word echoed in Mabel's mind, bouncing off the walls of her carefully constructed reality. She had always been told she was an only child, her mother's absence a tragic accident that had left her father a broken man. A life built on the foundation of being an only child, of her mother's absence explained away by a tragic accident years ago. But now, standing before her was undeniable proof that her life had been built on lies. The woman, her smile fading slightly, extended a hand adorned with a simple silver ring. The gesture was both an offering and a challenge, a bridge between two worlds that had been kept apart for too long.
I'm Cordelia. The name felt like a key, unlocking a door to a past Mabel had never known existed. And I believe you're my sister. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions and a lifetime of separation. Mabel's world tilted on its axis, the ground beneath her feet shifting as she tried to grasp the reality of her newfound sister. As the initial shock began to wear off, Mabel felt a strange sense of connection to Cordelia. It was as if a missing piece of her soul had finally been found, and she couldn't help but wonder what other secrets their shared past might hold. Questions swirled in her mind. Why had their parents kept them apart? What other truths had been hidden from her? And most importantly, what did this mean for her future? But for now, those questions could wait. Mabel reached out and took Cordelia's hand, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known before. Together, they would uncover the truth, one step at a time. As they walked away from the wedding reception, side by side, Mabel felt a sense of hope and excitement for the future. For the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. She had a sister, and together they would face whatever came next.
The world tilted on its axis. Cordelia, her twin, the very air Mabel breathed seemed to crackle with the weight of this impossible truth. She stared at Cordelia, at the reflection of herself, at the life she could have had, and a wild, reckless thought took root in her mind. Mabel, let's switch places. Cordelia's eyebrows rose in surprise, but a slow, knowing smile spread across her lips.
Switch places? And why would we do that, dear sister? Mabel, I need to know. I need to know why he kept us apart. Why I grew up never knowing about you.
Cordelia studied her for a long moment, her gaze as sharp and assessing as a surgeon's scalpel. Finally, she took a sip of her champagne, her eyes twinkling with mischief.
Very well, but we have to be quick. Our dear father is about to make a very important toast.
The transition was seamless, a carefully choreographed dance of whispered instructions and exchanged accessories. The air was thick with anticipation, every movement calculated, every glance meaningful. It was as if the entire room held its breath, waiting for the next act in this silent play. Cordelia slipped Mabel her diamond bracelet, a family heirloom that glittered like a beacon of their shared bloodline. The bracelet, with its intricate design and sparkling diamonds, had been passed down through generations, each stone holding a story, a memory. It was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of their family's legacy, a tangible connection to their ancestors. Mabel, in turn, fastened Cordelia's simple silver necklace around her neck, the coolness of the metal a stark contrast to the heat that coursed through her veins. The necklace, though modest in appearance, held a special significance. It was a gift from their mother, a token of her love and protection. As Mabel clasped it around Cordelia's neck, she felt a surge of emotion, a mix of love, fear, and determination. With a final, encouraging squeeze of her hand, Cordelia melted into the crowd, leaving Mabel to face their father. The weight of the moment settled on Mabel's shoulders, but she stood tall, her resolve unwavering. She knew what she had to do, and she was ready to face whatever came next. Luis, his face flushed with the warmth of celebration and several glasses of expensive wine, beamed at her approach. His eyes sparkled with joy, oblivious to the storm brewing in Mabel's heart. He raised his glass in a toast, his laughter ringing out above the chatter of the guests.
Ah, there you are, mi querida. His voice was warm, affectionate, but Mabel could hear the underlying tension, the unspoken questions that lingered between them. I was wondering where my beautiful daughter had disappeared to. Mabel, just exploring. Her response was casual, but her eyes betrayed her true feelings. She was searching, not just for answers, but for the courage to confront the man who had shaped her life in ways she was only beginning to understand.
She met his gaze, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Now was her chance, the moment she had been waiting for, the opportunity to finally uncover the truth that had eluded her for so long. The chance to demand answers, to unravel the mystery that had shrouded her life. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind countless times, but now that it was here, she felt a surge of doubt. Could she really do this? Could she face the man who had been both her protector and her tormentor? But before she could utter a word, Luis was whisked away by a gaggle of well-wishers, his attention diverted. The moment slipped through her fingers like sand, leaving her standing there, frustrated and helpless. She watched as he was enveloped by the crowd, his laughter echoing in her ears. Frustration bubbled in Mabel's chest. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. She had been so close, and now it felt like the universe was conspiring against her. But she refused to give up. She had come too far to turn back now. She needed to talk to him, to confront him with the truth that was as undeniable as the reflection she had seen in Cordelia's eyes. The truth that had haunted her dreams, that had driven her to the brink of madness. She knew that this was her only chance to get the answers she so desperately needed. Spotting him heading towards the terrace, a small group of people trailing in his wake, Mabel followed, her resolve hardening with each step. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but she pushed forward, determined to see this through. As she stepped out onto the terrace, the cool night air hit her face, and she felt a sense of clarity wash over her. This was it, the moment of truth. She squared her shoulders, took a deep breath, and prepared to confront the man who held the key to her past.